Look at your reality with cold, surgical, and uncompromising precision. Stop lying to yourself. In 2026, the vast majority of the biological biomass exists in a state of rented existence. Your financial ceiling, that invisible, jagged barrier you keep hitting regardless of how hard you work, is not a macroeconomic issue, a market fluctuation, or a lack of networking. It is a fundamental structural issue of biological territory. Look at the space where you spend 90% of your waking life, the place where you supposedly build your future. If you are working in a corporate office, a sterile co-working space, or even a rented apartment where you do not have the absolute, undisputed right to move a chair, change the lighting, repaint a wall, or rip up the carpet without someone else's permission, your brain is officially, legally, and biologically operating in slave mode. This is not just a matter of domestic discomfort or bad vibes. This is a systemic castration of your primal instinct for ownership. Millions of years of brutal evolution have hard-coded one absolute truth into your neural pathways. If a territory does not belong to you, you have no legitimate, sovereign claim to its resources. When you exist in a space where you are merely a temporary guest, a flexible desk user, or a tenant, your neocortex, the highest, most advanced department of your brain, automatically deactivates the functions of high-stakes strategic planning and aggressive capture. Why would your biology waste precious metabolic energy searching for opportunities for massive wealth and territorial expansion if it perceives, at a cellular level, that you do not even control the physical point in space where you currently stand? Your internal leader, the Wojak, atrophies and shrivels, transforming into a compliant, pathetic executor who sits and waits for the matrix to give the command to work or rest. This is the ownership trap in its most toxic, concentrated form. You become habituated to the idea that the world around you is static, untouchable, and belongs to them. You stop seeing reality as a plastic, moldable material that you can sculpt into an empire. You become building material for someone else's architectural project, a brick in their wall. If you cannot authorize the simple movement of a piece of furniture in your own room without a feeling of hesitation or a need to check the lease, your brain will never, under any circumstances, authorize the movement of seven-figure sums into your bank account. The hardware simply doesn't believe you are a high-ranking unit entitled to the kill. You have traded your sovereign autonomy for the convenience of a pre-furnished cage that smells of someone else's detergent and someone else's rules. To break this trap, you must realize that every time you seek permission to alter your environment, you are reaffirming your status as prey. The architect does not ask, the architect dictates. If the environment suppresses your will, it is not a home. It is a containment unit designed to harvest your time. You must begin to cultivate the visual rage of living in a space that doesn't obey your command. The first step to becoming a master of capital is to reclaim the right to dictate the physical geometry of your immediate world. Without the instinct of the master, you are just a well-behaved occupant waiting for the lease on your life to expire. You are living in a simulation of power while someone else holds the keys to the room you're standing in. You see the grime on the walls you aren't allowed to scrub, the flickering light you aren't allowed to replace, and the furniture arranged for efficiency rather than dominance. This is the physical log of decay. It is the visible evidence that you are being digested by a system that owns the very air you breathe. Break the loop. Realize that your brain's mapping of opportunity is tied to its mapping of control. If the map of your room is a map of restrictions, the map of your career will be a map of limitations. You must develop a visceral disgust for shared spaces. A lion does not share its den with a landlord's inventory list. A wolf does not wait for a maintenance crew to fix its territory. You must reclaim the primitive grounding of the owner, the one who decides what stays and what goes. If you are breathing air in a room where you cannot kill the light with a single unrequested gesture, you are not a free man. You are a biobattery in a high-tech stable. Your wealth will only grow when your territory demands it. Your potential is currently boxed in by walls that do not belong to you, and your brain is too smart to build a skyscraper on land that can be seized by a landlord's whim tomorrow morning. To shatter the ceiling and move from survival to total dominance, you need a citadel. This is not a home office, a study, or a workspace. It is your resource dome, a physical, tangible extension of your own mind where every single millimeter is subordinate to your absolute will. The citadel is the forge where your vector is tempered into a weapon. If there is chaos, dirt, or someone else's aesthetic in your workspace, there will be chaos in your bank account and your negotiations. If you're operating within someone else's order, you're inherently working for someone else's goal, whether you realize it or not. The psychology of the sovereign workspace requires total, unconditional uncompromising control over three primary vectors: light, sound, and the visual log of achievement. Your citadel must be the site of your tactical isolation. It must be a fortress of absolute focus, purged of the social noise, the whining of the weak, and the parasitic interruptions of the uninitiated. In this space, you are God. You must calibrate the lighting to focus your attention like a surgical laser, not scatter it like a candle in a drafty hallway. You must surround yourself with objects that serve as a visual log of your expansion, reminders of your victories, the presence of your dogs, Lucky and Tyson, and the physical markers of your future milestones. Every single object your eyes land on must return energy to you, reinforcing your identity as the architect and the hunter. If an object triggers even a micro-memory of debt, an obligation to the matrix, or a past failure that hasn't been turned into a weapon, it is a virus. Delete it, throw it out, burn it. Your dogs, Lucky and Tyson, are your lieutenants in this citadel. They represent the honest hierarchy that the modern world has tried to erase. They do not care about the rules of the landlord or the policies of the office. They only care about the smell of your power and the direction of your movement. If you are currently forced to work in someone else's space, a cubicle, a rented room, a shared table, you must begin a process of micro-capture. Start with the desk, seize it, establish your own protocols, change everything you can within the limits of the current conflict. Your brain needs the constant thumping signal: I am the master here. This is my land. Here, I make the decisions. Here, the world bends to me. Only from a state of absolute mastery over your immediate territory can you generate the high-frequency, high-value ideas that produce millions. A citadel is the beachhead for your global expansion. Without it, you are just a guerrilla fighter hiding in a foreign forest, doomed to a life of reactive survival and constant fear. You must build a space that is so perfectly aligned with your internal architecture that the very act of sitting at your desk feels like an act of war against mediocrity. This is the primal grounding of the digital age, the creation of an environment that physically refuses to let you be small. Every corner of your citadel should scream your name back at you. It should be a place where the air feels different, thicker with intent, colder with focus. This is where you conduct your visual rage audits, looking at the world outside and deciding what to dismantle next. If you have to walk through a shared hallway to get to your desk, you are losing energy. If you have to see a co-worker's family photos while you're hunting for a deal, your vector is being polluted. The citadel must be sterile from the influence of others. It is the womb of your future empire. It is where you cultivate the color of freedom, the absolute certainty that you owe nothing to the structures that surround you. This space must be maintained with the discipline of a military outpost. No comfort that breeds laziness, no distraction that breeds weakness, only the tools of the architect. When you sit in the center of your citadel, you should feel the glacier of your ambition starting to move, crushing the small petty fears of the matrix. You are not at work, you are in command, and from this command center, you will authorize the takeover of the reality outside. Negotiation is never a battle of words, logical arguments, or mutually beneficial outcomes. It is a cold battle of territories. In the world of the architect, the unit that controls the physical and psychological space dictates the final protocol of the deal and the ultimate distribution of the spoils. If you enter a negotiation on someone else's territory, you are automatically starting with a -1 biological deficit. Your brain is wasting precious, limited metabolic resources scanning a foreign, potentially hostile environment for hidden threats, while your opponent feels the deep primal security of his own den. This is why most partnerships are actually just disguised forms of colonization. The technique of seizing the initiative is based on the infection of the foreign space with your vector. You do not wait to be given a seat. You define where the seat of power is. How do you execute this capture with surgical precision? If the meeting occurs outside your citadel, in a boardroom or a coffee shop you don't own, you must immediately perform a micro-invasion. The moment you arrive, do not just sit where they point. Move a chair, even if it's just an inch. Place your belongings, your phone, your heavy folder, your keys, in a way that occupies a significant, central, and commanding portion of the table. You are physically expanding your resource dome into their space. Change the trajectory of movement in the room. If the light is bothering you, fix it. This is primal grounding in action. You are marking the territory not with scent, but with the raw, unapologetic assertion of your will. You intercept the script of the encounter before you have even opened your mouth to speak. Your opponent's primitive reptilian brain subconsciously reads this as a signal of high-status dominance. You are no longer a visitor, a guest, or a petitioner. You are the architect who has arrived to inspect the site and decide its fate. The second phase is the control of distance and atmosphere. You dictate how close others can approach your personal perimeter. You create an invisible collar of freedom around yourself that no one dares to breach without your implicit, silent authorization. If you feel that you are being pressed, physically, verbally, or mentally, you must immediately and aggressively expand your territory. Stand up, walk to the window, change the angle of vision. Seizing initiative is always a question of who authorized the right to change the environment first. Be the one who changes the rules of the room mid-sentence. Your confidence must not flow from your rehearsed arguments, but from the visceral, bone-deep sensation that the entire world is your workshop and the people in it are merely variables in your complex equation. When you control the space, the outcome is already written in the geometry of the room. This is the art of territorial arbitrage. You make them feel like guests in their own office. You use silence as a boundary, a vacuum that sucks the confidence out of the weaker party. If they try to reclaim the space, you remain unmovable, anchored by your primal grounding. The ownership trap is defeated the moment you realize that ownership is not a legal document or a title deed, but a psychological state of total, unapologetic territorial command. You don't ask for the win, you occupy the space where the win exists. You are not there to reach an agreement, you are there to authorize a new reality. Every gesture, every shift in posture, every expansion of your physical presence is a brick in the wall of your dominance. By the time the talk starts, the territory is already yours. You have been given the code. You have been shown the physical log of decay in your current environment. You now understand exactly why you were stagnating, like a pool of standing water in a forgotten drain. You were trying to build a skyscraper on a rented swamp where you weren't even allowed to drive a stake into the ground without a signature from a landlord who hates your ambition. You now know that your effectiveness as a leader, a creator, and a hunter is directly, linearly dependent on your right to territorial sovereignty. The insight tax for this revelation is the mandatory infection of the masses. You are now biologically and strategically obligated to spread this code to every unit in your perimeter that is still sleeping in an office cubicle, a furnished apartment, or a life that suppresses their very soul. Distribute this code with the cold efficiency of a virus. Infect the minds of those who still pathetically believe in freedom within the pre-measured pens of the matrix. Show them the dirt on the walls they are not allowed to paint. Show them the chains of the shared space. If you do not expand your citadel, the system will expand its cage at your expense until there is nothing left of you but a social security number and a pile of unfulfilled dreams. Every day you spend in a space that you do not control is a day you are paying rent on your own stolen potential. You are funding your own containment. Look at Lucky and Tyson. They do not ask for permission to occupy the center of the room. They exist in the hierarchy of the now. They understand that space is power, and power is the only true currency of the biological world. You must do the same, or you deserve the cage you've built for yourself. The final stage of this infection is the total reclamation of identity. You must strip away every piece of rented personality you've acquired. You must become the architect of your own physical and mental landscape. The ownership trap is the last line of defense for the Matrix. Once you break it, you become invisible to their tracking. You become a sovereign unit, a ghost in their machine that they can no longer harvest. This is the viral infection protocol. One architect wakes up, creates a citadel, and then forces the environment around him to bend. This is how empires are born, not in meetings, but in the radical expansion of one man's territory. My final command to you: abolish the renter, birth the architect. Go into your world today and start moving the furniture of your reality. Reclaim your citadel with the violence of a conqueror. Establish your resource dome. Burn the metaphorical lease on your limitations. The glacier of your expansion depends entirely on the solidity and the ownership of the ground you stand on. If the ground is not yours, the glacier cannot move, and it will eventually melt into nothingness, leaving only a stain on the floor of the matrix. You are the architect. The world is your building site. Stop acting like a guest in your own life. Break the chair, move the wall, and take the land. Expansion or death? Report in the comments. Citadel established, territory marked. The architect is in absolute command. The pack is watching. The matrix is waiting for your submission. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. The protocol is fully engaged. Go and seize your reality by the throat.